Imagine this. The person who once demanded your attention, who fed off your reactions, suddenly runs into a wall. Silence, complete, unshakable silence. Their world tilts off balance. They don't know how to respond. And that fear, that panic, it marks the beginning of the collapse. What follows isn't just awkward tension, it's a complete unraveling, step by step. Today, we explore how your silence triggers a narcissist's collapse and why staying firm is the most powerful move you can make. If you're watching this and wondering, could I really stay silent? Pause, breathe, and remember, silence is not weakness. It's clarity, it's power, it's the moment where they begin to fall apart while you rise. When you choose silence with a narcissist, the very first thing you'll notice is the shock of silence. Narcissists exist in a world driven by attention, reactions, and constant reinforcement of their superiority. Every glance, every remark, every sigh you offer feeds their sense of control, their illusion that they sit at the center of your world. Remove that, and it's like pulling the ground from beneath them. They are not accustomed to being met with nothing. Silence is unfamiliar territory. It's a space where they have no influence, no feedback, and no way to manipulate the situation. At first, this shock can appear subtle. They might pause, check their phone, or reread your last message again and again, trying to figure out if this is an error, a glitch, or just a temporary lapse in attention. But deep inside, confusion starts to build. They begin questioning their own assumptions. Did I do something wrong? Did I misjudge them? This is unsettling for someone whose identity depends on knowing, controlling, and predicting the emotional environment around them. The shock isn't only external, it reaches into their internal narrative. Narcissists often have a fragile sense of self beneath the grand image, and silence exposes that fragility. They begin to feel an unfamiliar tension, a restless anxiety because they realize their usual tactics, flattery, manipulation, guilt no longer work. This is where you gain the upper hand without doing anything at all, because silence communicates more than words ever could. It forces them to face an uncomfortable truth. They are no longer in control of you, and the strategies they depend on have suddenly lost their power. That moment of shock, brief as it may be, becomes the seed from which every later stage of collapse grows. This is where your silence begins to reshape the dynamic, creating space for their instability to quietly grow while you remain calm and steady. When the narcissist moves past the initial shock, the next phase is confusion and denial. At this point, they cannot understand why their usual tactics, whether charm, intimidation, or guilt, are failing. They replay past interactions in their mind, searching for an explanation that fits their worldview. Their reality, which normally runs on predictable rules where they hold control, suddenly feels unstable. This confusion is deeply uncomfortable because it exposes the gap between their expectations and what is actually happening. Denial often follows closely. They may tell themselves that you are simply busy or distracted, convincing themselves that your silence is temporary and doesn't signal a true loss of control. They may even create explanations that protect their fragile ego, building mental stories to justify the silence. This stage is filled with inner tension as they struggle with the idea that the rules have changed and the emotional supply they rely on is no longer guaranteed. During this time, You might notice them testing boundaries in subtle ways, sending messages that are indirect, vague, or manipulative in an attempt to get a reaction. They are looking for openings, searching for ways to regain influence. But every unanswered attempt deepens their confusion and increases their sense of powerlessness. For the narcissist, this phase is painful because it forces them to accept an uncomfortable truth. They are not in control, and their perceived power over you is slipping away. The confusion and denial build psychological pressure that continues to rise, preparing the ground for the next phase of collapse. By maintaining your silence, you increase this pressure, quietly proving that their need for validation no longer dictates your actions. It is here that the early cracks in their control begin to widen. After confusion and denial comes testing and probing. Once a narcissist realizes their influence isn't working, they begin experimenting, searching for any way to break through your silence. This is not simple curiosity. It's a calculated, almost compulsive effort to regain control. They might send messages ranging from casual check-ins to manipulative statements designed to trigger a response. Every action is intentional, aimed at seeing whether you will reply, engage, or provide the emotional reaction they crave. During this phase, you may notice familiar patterns disguised in new ways. They may reach out with compliments, sudden flattery, or gestures that appear apologetic, all meant to test the boundaries you've set. They might try to create guilt, subtly reminding you of past favors or emotional connections. Each attempt is designed to provoke even the smallest reaction, a crack in your silence. If you respond even slightly, they feel a sense of victory. If you remain still, their frustration intensifies. This testing becomes draining for them because it highlights their loss of control. Narcissists are used to predictable environments where they can influence others, and silence disrupts that completely. They cannot understand why their carefully built strategies are failing. Their efforts become more frequent and more desperate, often escalating in intensity as they try to recover a sense of power. For you, this is a moment of strength. Every unanswered message reinforces your position and deepens their instability. The narcissist is unraveling in real time, pouring energy into attempts that lead nowhere. By holding your silence, you stay in control of yourself while they exhaust themselves trying to control you. This phase lays the groundwork for the anger and emotional eruption that follows. When testing fails, the narcissist moves into anger and rage. This is where the mask of charm begins to slip, revealing the frustration underneath. They are no longer just confused or experimenting. They are faced with a clear reality. The person they once controlled is now out of reach. This sparks a wave of emotions that can range from irritation to intense anger. Their reaction often seems exaggerated because it comes not from the present moment, but from a deeper wound to their fragile ego. During this phase, you may notice sharp remarks, accusations, or attempts to make you feel guilty. Their behavior may escalate from passive-aggressive comments to direct outbursts. Sometimes they act indirectly, spreading rumors, influencing mutual connections, or creating tension in shared spaces, all in an effort to regain dominance. The anger is less about you and more about their inability to shape reality the way they want. Every time you resist engaging, their frustration grows stronger. This stage highlights their dependence on external validation. They are used to controlling how others see them, and your silence disrupts that completely. Their anger reflects internal chaos. They are trying to reconcile their self-image of superiority with the reality that they have no control here. For you, recognizing this helps you stay grounded. Their outbursts are a sign of their collapse, not a reflection of your worth. The anger is intense but temporary, and as long as you remain silent, it pushes them further into the next stage. After anger, the narcissist often shifts into grandiosity and self-importance. This is their attempt to regain control and protect their image. When their usual tactics fail, they double down on projecting strength and superiority. You may notice them boasting about achievements, exaggerating successes, or presenting their life as flawless. The goal is to convince both themselves and others that your silence hasn't affected them and that they remain powerful. Grandiosity acts as a shield. Internally, they may feel unstable, but externally, they project confidence and control. They might highlight status, connections, or accomplishments, creating situations where others validate them. This stage often feels performative. Every action is meant to maintain appearances and hide the insecurity underneath. For them, preserving the illusion of control is essential. Admitting weakness, even privately, feels impossible. During this time, you may notice a disconnect. Their confidence may appear convincing on the surface, but cracks begin to show. The displays are often excessive or inconsistent, revealing desperation rather than true strength. They are trying to convince themselves as much as anyone else that they are still in control, even as their inner stability weakens. For you, this is another moment to stay detached. Understanding that these behaviors are compensating for insecurity allows you to keep your boundaries without reacting. Their grandiosity may be loud, but it lacks substance. Each exaggerated display signals that their internal balance is slipping, bringing them closer to desperation and collapse. Following grandiosity, the narcissist often enters desperation and bargaining. At this stage, their earlier attempts to maintain control have failed, and your silence begins to break through their defenses. Desperation shows up as pleading, guilt, or promises meant to pull you back. They may reach out with apologies, attempts to reconnect, or emotional declarations about needing you. These actions are often framed to influence your emotions. Every move is both strategic and driven by real anxiety. They feel unsteady, powerless, and increasingly overwhelmed. During this phase, their behavior can become unpredictable. They may switch between charm and aggression, sometimes appearing vulnerable or even sincere. This inconsistency is confusing, but for them, it's a survival tactic. They are trying to regain emotional supply while coping with the realization that their control has slipped. Every message or interaction is designed to get a reaction, to break your silence. Internally, this stage is filled with tension. They struggle with the fact that someone they once controlled is now beyond their reach. Their mind races through different strategies, trying to find something that works. It becomes exhausting because nothing seems effective. For you, this is a critical point. Recognizing the desperation behind their actions helps you stay clear and composed. By remaining silent, you reinforce your boundaries and allow them to experience the consequences of losing control. This stage often marks the turning point where their collapse becomes unavoidable. After desperation comes collapse and devaluation. This is where their carefully maintained image begins to break down, exposing the vulnerability underneath. Their internal world, once built on control and manipulation, starts to fall apart because none of their strategies have worked. The charm, the anger, the pleading, none of it has restored their influence. What remains is a difficult awareness of their limitations and the emptiness behind their sense of power. During this phase, they may feel intense emotions such as shame, frustration, helplessness, and anxiety. Some may project blame outward to protect their self-image, while others withdraw and quietly process the realization that they are not in control. This stage often becomes less visible externally. Instead of dramatic behavior, you may notice silence, tension, or internal struggle. The collapse is subtle on the outside but significant internally. Psychologically, this moment matters because they are forced to face the truth that their influence is limited. They can no longer rely on predictable reactions, and the loss of emotional supply feels intense. Their identity, built on external validation, is shaken. For you, this is the clearest sign that your silence has shifted the balance of power. By holding your boundaries, you have allowed them to face reality. This stage leads directly into the final phase, where they begin to let go. The final stage is disengagement and acceptance. Here, the narcissist realizes that their attempts to control or provoke you are no longer effective. After moving through shock, confusion, testing, anger, grandiosity, desperation, and collapse, they are left with an uncomfortable truth. The person they once influenced is no longer responding. This stage involves stepping back from attempts to reach you. There is a quiet acknowledgement that their usual tactics cannot change the situation. At this point, they may turn inward, reflecting in their own way on the loss of control. Some may rewrite the story, convincing themselves that you are the problem or that circumstances force them to step away. Others may shift focus entirely, seeking new sources of validation elsewhere. Externally, they may stop reaching out or reduce communication significantly. Internally, full acceptance is rare, but they begin to adjust. The energy once spent trying to control you fades. This stage marks a complete shift in the dynamic. You are no longer a source of validation or a target for manipulation. For you, this is the result of consistency. It is where your silence completes the process, not because they have changed, but because you have remained steady and unavailable. Your silence has rewritten the dynamic, allowing you to reclaim peace while they face the limits of their control. In the end, the journey of a narcissist's collapse after your silence shows the power of boundaries and self-respect. From the initial shock of being met with nothing, through confusion, testing, anger, grandiosity, desperation, and eventual collapse, each phase reveals their dependence on control and validation. Silence is not passive. It is a powerful tool that exposes weaknesses, disrupts manipulation, and shifts control back to you. By standing firm and refusing to engage, you protect your energy and allow them to face the consequences of their behavior. This process is not about revenge. It is about reclaiming your emotional freedom. In choosing silence, you create space for their unraveling while strengthening your own clarity and peace. Silence, in this sense, becomes the quietest yet strongest form of power, marking the moment where control finally returns to you.